Welcome back, intrepid travelers. If you're curious about how to plan a responsible 5+ day itinerary to Haida Gwaii, one that uplifts and supports the model of regenerative tourism across the islands, today's video is for you. And if you're new here, hey, I'm Suze. I have more than 15 years in the travel and tourism industry. I have a master's in biodiversity where I study the intersection of tourism and the natural environment. I aim to empower you with knowledge and information so you can make more informed choices during your travels that leave the places you visit a little better than when you arrived. If that sounds like your thing, like, subscribe, and let's get into today's video. So in today's video, we're going to cover a brief introduction to Haida Gwaii, tips for planning an independent itinerary, as well as a day-by-day look covering 5 days. But before we get into the day-by-day itinerary, let's just cover a very brief introduction to Haida Gwaii. So I made a full comprehensive deep dive video into everything travelers need to know before visiting Haida Gwaii. So that video is a primer and a must watch in my opinion. So I'll link that here. Haida Gwaii is a remote archipelago off western British Columbia, just below southeast Alaska. It is only accessible by plane or ferry. There are 2 main islands, so there's Kiis Gwaay to the north and Gwaii Haanas to the south, with dozens of smaller islands scattered throughout. Haida Gwaii is a place that I've always described as shaped by extreme weather and geological events. So on the northern island, you'll find volcanic formed agates strewn across wind-battered beaches with most of the services, amenities, restaurants, and accommodations. To the south, in Gwaii Haanas National Park and UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, there is a plethora of old-growth forests, hot springs, and robust biodiversity that are all protected today by the Haida Watchmen and managed as one entire continuous ecosystem from the very tops of the mountains to the bottom of the sea floor, in a practice that kind of aligns with the Haida Ways of Being. Glaciers have come and gone, and throughout these changes, the Haida people have adapted, living in harmony with the land. So visiting Haida Gwaii is not just about visiting a place, it is also getting to know the people who have called it home for over 16,000 years. While it is part of modern-day Canada, it is the homeland of the Haida First Nation, who had at one point hundreds of villages and a very robust seafaring culture. Colonial powers brought oppression, cultural erasure, and the intentional spreading of smallpox with the main goal of eradicating the Haida people from these lands. After surviving and persevering, they recently had their land title recognized by the federal Canadian government. What makes this itinerary regenerative? So if you need a primer or kind of 101 introduction to regenerative tourism, I will link my blog post in the description below until I'm able to get a YouTube video online for you all, which is coming soon, I promise. But in a nutshell, regenerative tourism is a destination-wide model of tourism that is implemented by the community that allows them to leverage the benefits of tourism to restore and heal nature and culture in a way that delivers equitable benefits, whether those are economic or social, to the wider community, whether or not that they are working in tourism. A few places or communities like Haida Gwaii have been able to shift their tourism model toward this more regenerative system. Our role as travelers is more about aligning our behaviors and building an itinerary and making choices that uplift and support the regenerative kind of systems in place. It is of the utmost importance to travel with sensitivity and regard for both the Haida people and the land, taking the Haida Gwaii Pledge and aligning your travel itinerary with the Haida Ways of Being. So if you're unsure what those 2 things are, make sure you go back again and watch that primer video that I talked about in the introduction. So there are 2 main ways to visit. The first is on a fully guided multi-day excursion or an experience with a certified tour operator or company. This is a great way to have an immersive multi-day experience without the hassle or stress of planning. And honestly, I recommend this for anyone who wants a little bit more connection with the guided experience or help planning. The second is what we did, and that's putting together an independent itinerary as travelers. So this itinerary that I'm recommending for you today follows in our exact footsteps as independent travelers, but it will likely require some modifications on your end based on your unique circumstances. So we took the ferry over from Prince Rupert on a Monday night on a 10 p.m. sailing. So that means we slept on the ferry and arrived to Haida Gwaii around 5 a.m. on a Tuesday. So there are different sailings throughout the week, including some morning sailings. So you may arrive on a different day or a different time and kind of need to alter your itinerary. So you will need to do a little bit of research on your own just to make sure that you're kind of piecing this together. So during our itinerary, we mostly visited the northern island, Kiis Gwaay, kind of covering that entire island. We did book a day trip down to Gwaii Haanas National Park with a tour operator. More on that later because we had some weather disruptions. But if you are putting together an independent itinerary, I do recommend that you do book some guided excursions or work with local tour operators or guides to enhance your experience across the islands. If you do this, I recommend that you book these experiences early in advance because they can be quite popular, especially during a short summer season. I also recommend that you book these earlier in the week as possible, especially if you do plan on going down to Gwaii Haanas. Weather is very temperamental, and if they need to reschedule, you have lots of days and opportunities to reschedule if this is early in your itinerary or week. And finally, I should note that I use as many Haida place names as possible. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce them. I am really trying my best, and I spend a lot of time trying to learn how to say these place names. I do avoid all colonial place names where I am able. So I use words like Kiis Gwaay instead of Graham Island, Gwaii Haanas instead of Moresby Island, Dajingites instead of Queen Charlotte. So some of these place names have been federally recognized and returned by the Canadian government. Other ones are not federally recognized, but it is still really important to do your best to learn and be sensitive and use Haida place names. Here's an overview of everything we did on our first day, so you can kind of get an idea of what we're getting into. With a 5 a.m. wake-up call on the ferry from Prince Rupert to Haida Gwaii, we collected our things before loading up into our car and heading out. Our first stop was Balance Rock to watch the sunrise. Here, a red, deep burning sun rose slowly over the pink, hazy, and flat horizon, a tragic sign of the rampant and out-of-control wildfires burning across British Columbia at the time we visited. The pink water lapped at the lush green bladderwrack on the rocky shores of the beach. Two eagles, a mated pair, emerged from the Sitka spruce to begin their morning hunt. We spent a little over an hour here exploring tide pools without harming any animals and without collecting any shells or rocks. This slow, mindful morning set the tone for the rest of our trip. It was here, watching this slow sunrise, that I knew Haida Gwaii was a special place. We still had about 8 hours until we could check into our accommodation, so we decided that today would be the perfect day to drive to the very top of Kiis Gwaay. The drive took us about an hour and a half from Balance Rock. Eventually, the pavement gave way to a dusty dirt road with neon green lichen blanketing massive trees overhead. We crossed a bridge with a babbling brook underneath. We parked at the end of the road, read the informative signs here, and began our hike up Tau Tiladau. We were alone, save for the Haida land steward maintaining the boardwalk, which protected the delicate ecosystem below. We followed the trail up and through the dense forest. Hiking Tau Tiladau was one of our top favorite things that we did on Haida Gwaii. The hike is relatively short, but just long enough to give you a taste for the area. The infrastructure and trails were well maintained by the Haida First Nation, and we really enjoyed the educational signage along the way that allowed us to learn about the Haida origin stories and the ecology of the region. If you're curious where your 1% goes, so donating 1% of your total trip cost to the Haida Nation is part of the Haida Gwaii Pledge, and it helps fund and support trail infrastructure and management, such as the trail that you'll be using today. The first viewpoint we had on this was of Naikun, which is from the Haida origin story and really the beach where the Haida people begin their history. On the descent, the forest gave way to North Beach with howling winds and a dramatic geological site, offering views of Tau Tiladau from below. According to Haida legend, Tau Tladal was created when Tau turned to stone, remaining here forever. His brothers sent eagle and whale after him to find him, but they slammed into Tau, also turning into stone. Can you see the shape of an eagle here on this rock formation? And here, where the waves crash against these lava rocks, they appear to form a blowhole. It's really geological forces that have shaped this land, where molten lava has bubbled from earthen tubes over 2 million years ago, creating Tau Tladal. Millennia later, glaciers have dramatically reshaped this area, eventually receding to reveal what we see today. Driving back toward the town of Masset, you may choose to visit Agate Beach. We had very stormy weather during this first morning, so we just opted for a quick trip. But people do spend a lot of times at Agate Beach. There's even a campsite here. But if you do visit, I want to remind you, do not collect the agates on this beach. It goes against the Haida Ways of Being, and they have specifically asked you not to take agates or anything from their land to take home with you. Over decades, people have removed bucketfuls of agates, and there are few remaining. The Haida people see them as part of the ecological systems here at work, and they would like them to remain where they are. After hiking, we visited the Haida Gwaii Beach shop for a hot coffee and a bite of breakfast. So the Haida Gwaii Beach shop has a few savory and sweet baked goods, local snacks, and a few gifts. So we made sure to stock up on plenty of extra snacks. As we left the Haida Gwaii Beach shop, we're heading toward Masset. Since we drove our electric vehicle to Haida Gwaii, we plugged into one of Canada's most rural slow chargers in Masset and pondered how to spend the rest of our day before check-in in a town of less than 800. The answer led us to a pivotal decision. We started walking in a place that most people just drive through, setting the stage for a serendipitous cultural experience. Since we had our 5 a.m. start, our first order of business was yet another cup of coffee. This time, we visited the Ground Gallery and Coffee House, which is a cute local coffee shop with lots of unique gifts sourced from around the island. We made sure to pick up a few along with our coffee. From there, we decided to head into Gao Tlegay. Most people simply just drive through, and you can visit different shops and take photos. But if you do visit, please make sure you're following the Haida Ways of Being and you have taken the Haida Pledge and you're being a respectful guest here. We entered along a multi-use footpath. Along our walk, we saw a red dress stuck to a telephone pole, a dark reminder of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls who have been taken from this land too soon. I rested on a bench with a hand-carved skina, or orca whale, and eagles perched above us on modified telephone poles designed just to prevent them from electrocution. When we finally entered the village, I saw a sign in a driveway in a local home that said April White's Raven House and Gallery. I stepped up, hesitant, my hand hovering on the doorbell, wondering why we were the only ones there. Was it open to the public as a gallery? I finally rang the bell. The door opened and we were welcomed into the private home and gallery of April White, an Indigenous Haida woman, artist, and scientist. She sat at a large desk busy at work, but encouraged us to ask questions as we perused her art and gallery. Art covered the walls. I noticed that she depicted predatory animals in the stomachs of their prey, so a harbor seal inside of a herring fish. When I asked her why, she said, "Most view predators as eating the prey. We Haida see prey as giving life, like birth to the predator." For me, as an ecologist with a more Western way of thinking, that concept flipped my perspective around, and I deeply appreciated that conversation and cultural exchange. I finally found a piece of art that spoke to me, and I bought it to support her endeavors, and I now have a beautiful piece of art hanging in my home. We continued our walk along the water, eventually coming to the Haida chief's traditional long house with 3 clan poles or monumental poles. You are allowed to take photos of these poles, but do be mindful where you're parking, don't be too obstructive, and be mindful of the activities that you're doing here. Gao Tlegay has plenty of Haida-owned shops and galleries. I encourage you to visit as many as you can, shopping and supporting the community. We finally made it back to Masset and decided to visit the Nature Center at Delcala. The Nature Center is a small ecology space dedicated to the conservation and protection of wetlands here. The wetlands are the most magical during spring or autumn migrations when you can spot thousands of birds. We were here in the mid-August, so we unfortunately didn't see that many birds, but we still made a small donation, and we did spot a few sandhill cranes out through our binoculars. There's also a really great bike trail around this area. If you rent bikes or have a bike, you can explore this wetland more thoroughly. If you have time and interest, you can visit the Dixon Entrance Maritime Museum here, or rent bikes from Masset Cycles, like I said, and ride your bikes around the wetland. There are quite a few food options in Masset, so make sure you eat lunch here. We ordered an extra large vegetarian pizza from 626 Pizza. The food truck is right next door to the pizza place. While you're here, there are some convenience stores, a liquor store. You might want to stock up on some snacks, drinks, or anything else you will need before checking in. Our accommodation for the week is a indigenous-owned place called the Haida House at Talal. They had just finished building a new set of private cabins on their property that were inspired by a long house. We were fortunate enough to book one of these a few months in advance. They also have a main lodge with a few rooms as well. The Haida House offers the very best in Haida hospitality. Owned and managed by the Haida Nation, they employ people from the Haida Nation. The Haida House was once a colonial-owned bear hunting lodge, but the Haida Nation was able to purchase it, and under their stewardship, they've transformed it from an extractive bear hunting lodge into a regenerative eco experience. The Haida House is such a great example of coastal tourism done right. So I have kind of done a lot of research on the impacts of coastal and beach tourism. I'm going to link that blog post in the description. But by keeping the cabins at the Haida House away from the beach and not developing or altering natural beach dynamics, they've left the sedge grass and the sand dunes here intact. And this not only helps ocean biodiversity, but it keeps us safe from storms and intense winds. Before our dinner reservation for the night at the Haida House, we visited the beach, just a short 2-minute walk from our cabin. The beach has beautiful soft gray sand and those natural beach dynamics that I was talking about. It was so nice just to sit on the driftwood and connect with conversation with my partner along with these incredible views. So there is a bar and restaurant on site at the Haida House, and they serve indigenous inspired foods. Reservations are highly, highly recommended, even if you are staying at the accommodation with them. So if you have reservations, this is the perfect choice for dinner on your first night. The Haida House also serves breakfast every morning, ranging from Benedict to pancakes. So we ate breakfast here every morning. So for dinner, they typically have at least one vegetarian dish. For us this night, it was gnocchi with seasonal vegetables. We also got to try cocktails with a local Haida berries. After dinner, we retreated back to our hot tub, our private hot tub at our cabin. We enjoyed a bottle of wine and we listened to the sounds of the forest and beach. So whether you're staying in the main lodge or the longhouse inspired cabins, you'll be supporting indigenous employment, beach and ocean conservation, and have a unique cultural experience, all with added benefit of comfort and privacy. So if you're interested at staying at the Haida House, I will put a link to them in the description below, as well as a few other local recommendations. Day 2 is hopefully a trip down to Gwaii Haanas National Park and Reserve with a local Haida-owned company. Here's a quick overview of what Day 2 looks like. So the best way to visit Gwaii Haanas National Park, which requires a permit and is only accessible by boat or plane, is with a licensed and expert tour operator or guide. We had booked with one of them called Haida Style Expeditions. Unfortunately, we were unable to visit due to an extreme multi-day storm pattern that lingered over the southern islands. I was really bummed, naturally, because this was kind of the highlight of our itinerary. I really hope that you were able to do this. I will say that even though we weren't able to do this because of bad weather, Haida style expeditions really did everything they could, trying to reschedule every day, but the weather pattern just lingered. They always kept our safety in mind, and they were very transparent and communicated with us in advance. So even after all of that, I still have a very high regard for them, and I really hope that I'm able to return to Haida Gwaii and fulfill this experience with them. So Haida style expeditions offers a variety of day tours down to Haanas National Park. Why did I pick Haida style expeditions for the company that I would support? So Haida style expeditions is a local family and Haida owned and operated company. They have a very strong commitment to regenerative cultural and ecotourism practices. They employ and support Haida youth guides to help train the next generation. They foster a sense of community and a network among the small businesses across Haida Gwaii. I would 100% recommend you book with Haida style expeditions. They're just a genuinely good company that cares about the Haida people, they care about the islands, and they care about nature. So what do you do if your tour was canceled like ours? So if your tour gets canceled or moved due to weather, embrace the island time and that slow travel mentality. Don't get mad at the guides. They are doing this for your safety. But if your tour is moved to another day, you can just swap this itinerary around. So take day 3 and move it into day 2 and kind of move things around. Go with the flow, or just enjoy some quiet time back at the cabin. And if you manage to make it on your tour, fingers crossed for you, you'll be back in Dajing Giits around dinner time. So that is the perfect opportunity to have dinner in this small village site. We ate at Blacktail Restaurant twice because we loved it so much, and they do have lots of vegetarian options. Blacktail is one of the main island's most popular restaurants, and because of that, there's actually a line around the front door waiting for them to open their doors right at 5 o'clock. But if the stars align for you tonight, I recommend that you eat here. Their options are restaurants called Gather, The Jackal, or Sapporo. Our third day on Haida Gwaii was a well-balanced afternoon and evening of hiking and cultural experiences. So here's an overview of day 3. My favorite part about staying at the Haida House at Talal were the days we were able to indulge in that slow morning mentality. We would wake up in our cabin, make a pot of coffee, and head down to the beach to watch that magical morning sunrise. Here, where the island time and Haida way of life seep into your very soul, you find yourself slowing down automatically. Breakfast at the Haida House is served in their main dining room. Make sure you don't miss it. After breakfast, we are geared up to hike the Spirit Lake Trail, which is a network of approximately 5 kilometers of walking trails through the forest that took us around 2 hours to enjoy. I love the trails on Haida Gwaii because they always remind me to slow down and engage all my senses. The Spirit Lake Trail is a sacred place for the Haida people where their supernaturals were busy at work creating mischief. It tells the story of Wasku, a supernatural being with fins, a tail, and bear-like ears. This supernatural hunted whales, but also other things, like mischievous, misbehaved children who had wandered off, including an entire family of brothers. The eldest brother in this family, Sacred One, standing and moving, worked with Mouse Woman to slay this evil supernatural being and free his brothers from its stomach. Starting on the trail, you will walk below a carved archway. Take some time to appreciate and enjoy this archway. It was carved by the famous Haida carver Bill Reid. So Bill Reid has created some of Canada's most notable artworks depicting Haida origin story and some of the best monumental poles. It felt really special to see something of his in such an unpretentious setting. As we walked the trails, we enjoyed learning more about the supernaturals and soaking in the quiet nature of Haida Gwaii. After you've fully enjoyed this network of trails, you can do as much or as little of this walking as you want. You might want to grab lunch. You might pick between a few choices. You can swing by the Crow's Nest Cafe and convenience store for a kind of quick bite, you can grab a savory baked good for lunch or put together whatever smattering of food you can buy from the convenience store. There's also a co-op store nearby and Jagg's Coffee House as well for something a little bit more hearty. So next up on our itinerary is the Haida Heritage Center. So visiting here was one of the more profound cultural experiences I've had in all my travels, and I think that's saying quite a lot. This is a must-do experience and really a non-negotiable part of a responsible itinerary on Haida Gwaii. So they do have an EV charger on site, so we were able to plug in our car while we went in and learned. We were able to pay extra for a longer guided tour. If this option is available to you, I highly recommend it because it really enhanced our learning experience here. Our guide was a young Haida woman named Mackenzie, and she approached very complex topics directly yet kindly to ensure that we were learning about Haida culture, history, and ecology through their lens, but without the rose-colored glasses. We started the tour with prehistory, learning about the Haida origin stories, supernatural creators. There were massive colorful masks in this entryway and carvings of these beings that really encapsulated entire stories in a single piece of art. We learned about village, clan structure, matriarchal structures, their subsistence life, and their monumental or clan poles. Our guide's indigenous knowledge regarding ecology was very different than mine, and I really deeply appreciated listening to her perspective about the loss of the sea otter and the introduction of beavers and deer to the islands of Haida Gwaii. We explored the path of colonization and observed how clothing and art evolved and changed through trade. However, it wasn't long before their autonomous trade relationships were taken away from them. So clear written records indicate the intentional spreading of smallpox for the extirpation of this execrable race. Colonial armies had been inoculated with a vaccine against smallpox, but the Haida people were offered no treatment. The archipelago went from a bustling and thriving cultural center with many villages and cultural sites, losing 95% of their population over the years. The loss of culture and knowledge during this time is akin to burning 30,000 books. Of those that survived smallpox, they were shipped off to residential schools, and the Indian Act segregated and separated the people. At the end of the tour, there was one piece of art that Mackenzie shared with us that hung on the wall created by survivors of residential schools. A vivid and dark image evoking trauma, torment, and the pain of children haunted me. Our time with Mackenzie was up, and she left me crying, but with the message of resilience for the Haida people as they rebuilt their culture and continued to fight for their land claim to be returned. We were raw and emotional, but we stuck around a little bit and explored more of the Heritage Center with Mackenzie's words and lessons etched into our minds. We gained a new perspective on our home here in Canada, including colonization and the country's long journey to reconciliation. You have a few options for dining and dinner tonight. So for vegetarian-friendly dining options, I recommend booking at either the Haida House or whatever accommodation you have chosen to stay at. The variety of restaurants in Dajingis that I've already recommended, or there are a few options in the town of Port Clements as well. However, if you are open to eating meat and seafood, so full disclosure, we are vegetarian, but we did have one restaurant recommended to us quite a few times. So this is called Kiis Gwaaiy's Kitchen. It's a Haida dining experience in the private home of Haida elder Roberta. Advanced reservations for this dining experience are a must, as there is only a select number of seats around a shared table in her home. So Kiis Gwaaiy's Kitchen serves indigenous foods, so that includes salmon, herring roe, venison, seaweed, halibut, local vegetables, mushrooms. So portions are small, but they're really designed to kind of allow you to sample a variety of foods from Haida Gwaii culture. Dinner starts with a Haida prayer, and there are cultural elements such as traditional songs as well. Kinawai's kitchen is a highly praised dining experience, but it's very different from what you might be used to coming from a Western culture. Leave your expectations out the door. All your preconceived notions of dinner just out the door. Gone. Go in with an open mind and open heart. So dining here is a shared experience. So you will be sitting around a large table with strangers and other travelers, but hopefully you all become friends at the end of this dining experience. Day 4 is for exploring provincial parks, cultural and historical sites, as well as a sunset dinner. Here's an overview of the day. If you want a more relaxed start to your day, enjoy lounging around, going for a beach walk, reading, writing, or whatever creative outlet you wish to pursue. If you're a more active adventurer, this is a great time to hike the Anvil Trail. So the Anvil Trail is about a 5 to 6 kilometer trail that took us about 2 hours to walk. So while most of the trails across Haida Gwaii are generally well maintained, the Anvil Trail is a bit of an exception. So while it's not challenging, it was overgrown at times, and it did require a keen sense of trail navigation, hopping over logs, hiking safely in black bear territory, trudging through overgrown parts, going through mud and a few slippery logs. We loved this trail, but it might not be for everyone. But if this sounds like your thing, you can come hike the Anvil Trail with us. So the trail takes you from a dead forest in the early stages of forest recovery. And as you progress along this trail, you'll go through the different stages of recovery until you reach a proper old growth forest. And it starts out a little claustrophobic in this dead forest, but as soon as you travel through, the signs of life begin to return. We first started seeing woodpeckers and squirrels, but then as we entered this pocket of old growth, it was just bursting with life as eagles sat perched in the tops of trees, looking down at the rivers for fish. Ancient trees stood tall with naturally felled trees in our path, all signs of a very healthy pocket of old growth forest. We enjoyed this trail munching on native salal berries while keeping an eye out for black bears. We wanted to check out a few more provincial parks, so we stopped at Kiis Provincial Park and Lake. So Kiis is a day use site. It's a beautiful lily-filled lake surrounded by trees, and there is a short walk that takes you along the lake where you can learn about the state of the ecosystem here. One thing I found fascinating was about the Pacific crabapple and the impacts of the introduced beaver and deer have had on this species. So the Pacific crabapple is Haida Gawaii's only native fruit, and it's a very important food source for the Haida people and the native animals across these islands. So unfortunately, when the beaver and deer were introduced, they really had devastating impacts on the crabapple. While they are very beneficial in the ecosystems that have evolved alongside them, they can be really harmful in places like Haida Gwaii. So the beavers felled a lot of the native crabapple, and the deer would nibble on any growing shoots, preventing recovery. So there is a now Haida-led kind of conservation program that brings out Haida youth to protect these trees. So as you walk alongside, you'll see a lot of these crabapple trees kind of encased in almost like chicken wire to protect them, and you can learn a little bit more about this for yourself. If you brought a stand-up paddleboard or kayak, this may be a good opportunity to bring it out and enjoy a peaceful paddle among the lilies. There is another provincial park in the nearby area called Gantal Gadas. Honestly, I recommend skipping it though. We did stop just to see what it was about. It's a 3-minute walk from the parking lot to the lake, but unless you brought a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard, there isn't a lot to do here, not a lot of information, so I recommend skipping this spot. Lunch you can enjoy at a food truck called Fork in Port. So it's only open Thursday to Sunday, and they have hot dogs, burgers, fries, baked goods, wraps, and more. There are vegetarian options here, including a veggie burger. So you can enjoy eating at this charming little food truck with other island locals. And on other days, you can check out the Buck Snort Cafe in Wankoon if this food truck is closed. After lunch, we'll be walking the Yagun Gunlai or the Golden Spruce Trail. The trailhead is down a logging road. If this is your first time driving down a logging road, don't worry, it is not very far to the trailhead. But when driving on a logging road, you should always have your headlights on. Be prepared to pull aside for logging trucks. Have a spare tire on you, know how to change a spare tire, and always have a GPS or phone. So the Golden Spruce Trail, or the Yagun Gunlai, is a short, flat trail through the forest. You're walking to the place where the Yagun Gunlai once stood. The story of the Yagun Gunlai, or the Golden Spruce, is baffling and wild. The story of Yagun Gunlai tells of a boy and his grandfather who left their village during a violent winter storm. The grandfather told his grandson to never look back, for if he did, he would go on into the next worlds. Unfortunately, the boy eventually disobeyed and looked back. He became the Yagun Gunlai, the Golden Spruce, and a part of him remained here for over 300 years for people to look at and remember his story. The Golden Spruce is a genetic mutation in the spruce tree, and it contributes to a warm golden color of the needles that appear to be glowing when the sunlight hits it just right. One night in 1997, a deeply troubled forest engineer cut down Yagun Gunlai in a misguided protest. The Haida people described the collective sense of loss in losing one of their ancestors. The man was arrested, but he escaped and was last seen kayaking toward Alaska. His fate has never been confirmed or fully revealed, but his kayak was eventually found. You'll learn of this story as you walk this quiet forest trail to the place where Yagun Gunlai once stood. The legend of Yagun Gunlai does live on. A team of researchers at the University of British Columbia were able to save a genetic sampling of the tree. They have successfully regrown the tree from this sample. The new sapling now grows in Wacoon, or the Port Clements Community Park. Make sure you visit to see this tree born once again. With more time in your day, you can explore the rest of Port Clements or Wacoon. There's a historical museum here that tells the story of colonial logging across Haida Gwaii. The Rainbow Wharf is the perfect place for a short stroll with stunning views over the inlet. Finally, once it's time for dinner, make sure you head to the Axe and Anchor. So this is a fun, modern pub with waterfront dining. Arriving early does help ensure you get a spot at a good table right on the waterfront. So we enjoyed sipping wine and watching the slow sunset before eventually returning to the Haida House. The fifth and final day of our Haida Gwaii itinerary is a great day for the Pasuta Shipwreck Trail. Here's an overview of everything that's happening on day 5. Pasuta Shipwreck Trail is one of the most popular hikes on Haida Gwaii. The great thing about staying at the Haida House is that you can actually start this hike right from the beach in front of the cabins. This route is about 12 kilometers and can take you anywhere from 3.5 to 4 hours to complete. If the tides are in your favor and you have enough time, you may start this early in the morning and come back to the Haida House and check out, or you may choose to have breakfast and then check out of the Haida House, leave your car on site, and then complete this hike, coming back for your car later. Before leaving the Haida House, we made sure to check the tide timetable to ensure the tide was receding. And from there, we started on the beach and trudged along several kilometers of flat but strenuous, because we were hiking on the beach, terrain to the shipwreck. Now, it's really important to note that the beach portion of this trail is optional, but it is not safe to do unless you check the tides. You can only access this portion of the hike during a receding and low tide. If that doesn't work with your schedule, you will need to start this trail from the East Beach Trail, and it will be done as a there and back route. So I'm going to include links to the All Trails options below. So as we hiked, shorebirds hunted in cadence with the waves, while large black albatross bobbed out in the ocean alongside the occasional seal. Many unfortunate jellyfish were left behind. 5 kilometers felt more like 10 in the sand, but finally the shipwreck appeared before us. So the Pasuta ship was built in World War I as part of an emergency shipbuilding program. When it retired, it made its way to Haida Gwaii, where it was retrofitted as a log hauler for the logging industry on the Haida's traditional lands. It didn't last long, though, as stormy weather that the area is notorious for ran it aground. So here it has remained for nearly 100 years. After exploring the shipwreck and taking lots of really cool photos, we took the East Beach Trail back, took us away from the beach and into the forest in the Nikun protected area, which is co-managed by the Haida Nation and BC Parks, which combines Indigenous knowledge and stewardship with BC Parks research and science. We followed the trail markers, which resemble salmon done in Haida style art. This protected area is home to an intertidal river, with protected and sensitive plants, swans, salmon, trout, bats, black bears, shorebirds, and more. It really is a biodiversity hotspot. Eventually, after coming through the beautiful forest, we arrived at the East Beach Trailhead, where you can start or end this trail if you're not staying at the Haida House. We eventually walked back along the road to get our car from the Haida House and check out. After saying our goodbyes to the staff at the Haida House, we departed and stopped at Jag's Coffee House for lunch and coffee. The food and coffee here are top-notch. After that, we spent some time shopping and enjoying the small boutiques. We had lots of time before the ferry returned, so we did quite a bit of shopping to support the local community. There are so many great choices, so I'm going to list a few of them here. Dinner was once again at Blacktail. I did tell you we ate here twice. We arrived here at 4:45, 15 minutes before they opened, and we were already in a line of people. It was worth it though. So after our early dinner, we still had plenty of time, so we enjoyed walking along the waterfront in Dajingites. We visited the harbor, took some photos, enjoyed the oyster catchers in the water. We grabbed ice cream and we stopped by the visitor center, which in hindsight we probably should have done on day one, but it was still nice to visit before we left. Finally, the time came for us to say goodbye to Haida Gwaii and load up on the ferry back to Prince Rupert. We joined the long line of cars boarding the ferry. We booked a sleeper cabin once again since this was a night sailing. We settled into our cabins and headed to bed, anticipating an early morning arrival in Prince Rupert. If you have more time on Haida Gwaii, 5 days really felt like just scratching the surface in a lot of ways. So we were somewhat limited. We had an electric vehicle. We were really pushing the limits of our range and capability on this trip, but that also meant that we couldn't go to a lot of these more remote or rural areas. So here are some of the things that I would have added to the itinerary with more time or a different type of vehicle. I will say that I arrived on Haida Gwaii bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with so few expectations. I knew it was going to be amazing, but I didn't want to come with preconceived expectations or thoughts of what it would be like. And this regenerative itinerary left me raw, a new woman, and with open eyes. My experience on Haida Gwaii was enlightening, exciting, meaningful, emotional, and truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. If you're planning on visiting Haida Gwaii, I hope you find this heartfelt itinerary helpful. So until next time, happy travels.